Have you ever wanted something so badly, but no matter what you did, people just ignored you? They brushed you off, told you no, and expected you to walk away. Most people do. They take no for an answer. They give up. But what if I told you about a little girl, just a child, who refused to back down? She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply stood her ground. And in the end, she won. This isn't just some random story. It actually happened. And the lesson behind it? It's one of the most powerful truths about success, persistence, and the human will. It comes from Think and Grow Rich, one of the most influential books ever written about wealth and success. A book that has shaped the mindset of countless self-made millionaires. And today, I'm going to tell you one of its most unforgettable lessons. Let's go back in time. It was a time when life was harsh, especially for those at the bottom of society. In a small rural town, a poor black woman worked tirelessly as a sharecropper, struggling to provide for her family. Every penny she earned was crucial for survival. But there was a problem. Her landlord owed her 50 cents, and despite the small amount, she needed that money. Perhaps she had asked for it before, perhaps she knew that confronting the landlord herself would be useless. Either way, instead of going herself, she sent her young daughter to collect the debt. The girl, small in stature but carrying a quiet confidence, walked steadily to the landlord's house. She had been given a job, and she intended to do it. She reached the house, stepped onto the porch, and knocked firmly on the door. There was no hesitation, no nervousness, just a simple certainty that she was there for a reason. A few moments passed before the door swung open. The landlord, a rough and impatient man, stood in the doorway, towering over her. He was the kind of man who was used to being obeyed, the kind who expected people to move when he told them to. The girl, however, did not seem intimidated in the slightest. She looked straight up at him and, in a clear, steady voice, said, "My mother says you owe her 50 cents. The landlord frowned. 50 cents was nothing to him, not worth his time or attention. And yet, something about the way she stood there, so still, so unwavering, irritated him. He had no patience for a little girl demanding money. Without much thought, he waved his hand dismissively. "Go away," he said, turning back toward the house. Most children, most people, would have left. They would have taken that as a final answer. But the girl did not move. She stood on the porch, silent and unmoving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She simply remained where she was, as if she hadn't heard him at all. Minutes passed. The landlord, now inside, happened to glance out the window, and there she was, still standing exactly where he had left her. His irritation flared again. What was wrong with this kid? Couldn't she take a hint? Annoyed, he stomped back to the door and yanked it open. "I told you to get out of here," he snapped. His voice was sharper this time, his expression harder. But the girl didn't react the way most would have. She didn't shrink away. She didn't run. Instead, with the same steady tone as before, she repeated, "My mother says you owe her 50 cents. The landlord clenched his fists. This was ridiculous. He had real work to do, real problems to deal with. He didn't have time for some stubborn little girl refusing to leave his doorstep. His frustration boiled over, and he took a threatening step forward. "I don't have time for this," he barked. "Get lost before I," and then, just as he was about to raise his hand, the girl took a step forward, too. She locked eyes with him, her expression completely unshaken. And then, without warning, she threw her head back and screamed at the top of her lungs, "My mother says you owe her 50 cents. The sheer force of her voice shattered the moment. The landlord froze, completely caught off guard. He had expected fear. He had expected submission. Instead, what he got was defiance so powerful that it stopped him cold. There was absolute silence. And then, as if moving on instinct, the landlord slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out 50 cents, and placed it in the girl's hand. He didn't argue. He didn't tell her to leave again. He simply gave her the money, as if there was no other possible outcome. The girl took the coins, closed her fingers around them, and, without another word, turned and walked away. She did not run. She did not gloat. She simply left, as if everything had gone exactly as expected. The landlord stood there, motionless, watching her disappear down the road. He had lost, and he knew it. But more than that, he knew he had never stood a chance. This story isn't just about a little girl collecting a debt. It's about the kind of persistence that bends even the strongest resistance. Think about what happened. The landlord was in complete control. He had power, authority, and the ability to send her away without a second thought. And yet, he paid her. Why? Because she refused to back down. Most people, when faced with rejection, give up almost immediately. They ask for something, get told no, and then walk away, telling themselves it wasn't meant to be. But the truth is, success, whether in business, relationships, or life itself, doesn't come to those who quit at the first obstacle. It comes to those who stand firm, who refuse to take no for an answer, who keep pushing forward no matter how many times they are turned away. This little girl didn't argue. She didn't plead. She didn't try to explain why she deserved the 50 cents. She simply repeated her demand, over and over, until the landlord had no choice but to give in. She wasn't aggressive, but she was unwavering. That's the secret to real persistence, having absolute certainty in what you want and refusing to back down until you get it. Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, included this story in his book for a reason. He understood that persistence is one of the most important traits of successful people. Every great achievement in history has come from someone who refused to quit. When Thomas Edison was inventing the light bulb, he failed over 1,000 times before he found the right solution. When Henry Ford was developing the automobile, people told him it was impossible. But they didn't stop. They kept going. Just like the little girl who stood on that porch and refused to leave without what she came for. The world is full of people who give up too soon. They quit their dreams because of a little resistance. They stop pursuing their goals because someone told them no. But the ones who succeed? They're the ones who stand their ground. They're the ones who keep pushing, keep demanding, and keep moving forward until the world has no choice but to give them what they want. So the next time life tells you no, ask yourself, are you going to walk away? Or are you going to stand your ground and demand what's yours? Because in the end, success doesn't go to the strongest or the smartest. It goes to the ones who refuse to give up. Success doesn't belong to those who wait for opportunities to come knocking. It belongs to those who knock and refuse to leave until the door opens. That little girl didn't have power, money, or status. She had something even stronger, an unshakable belief that she would get what she came for. And she did. That same power is inside you. Whatever it is you're chasing, whether it's success in business, financial freedom, a personal goal, or a dream you've had for years, you will face rejection. You will hear people tell you no. You will be ignored, dismissed, and even ridiculed. But none of that matters unless you let it stop you. You have two choices. You can be like most people, accept rejection, back down, and settle for less. Or you can be like that little girl, stand your ground, stay persistent, and refuse to leave without what you paid for. So the next time you hit a wall, remember this story. Remember that persistence breaks down resistance. And remember that the world eventually gives in to those who refuse to quit. Now, the question is, will you be one of them? If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Let's spread the power of persistence together.